Hello guys, welcome back to another video. So this is where it all began, with an FTP of 229 watts and in category C on Zwift. I was below average and I was with the middle-aged men who had God knows how many other commitments, kids, wives and that whole shebang to deal with. And then there was me, an aspiring professional triathlete who had done sport his whole life. And to say I felt like I didn't belong here would be an understatement. In fact, I thought I should be anywhere but here. I just didn't feel comfortable. Now this gave me a lot of motivation and a lot of fuel for the fire for me to get my head in the game and get my sort of ideas buckled up and smash my training, because I did not want to be in this position a year from now. Now at this point I had leg pain, knee pain, foot pain, you name it, I probably had it. It was a shambles. I mean, to the point where I was wearing squat knee sleeves while I was cycling. And yes, you heard that right, squat knee sleeves while I was cycling. God knows what the people walking past the house must have thought. Me sat there on the bike with loud music playing, sweating, screaming, and with squat knee sleeves on. Yes, it was not a good look, and I am not proud of it, but it is what it is. Now, at this point, I had had no previous cycling experience in terms of doing structured workouts. Yes, I'd done some triathlons growing up. In fact, I'd done a lot of triathlons growing up, and a lot of running and swimming, but I'd never actually got sort of that enjoyment and fun out of cycling, so I never did it. The extent of my cycle experience was doing the odd family bike ride with the whole family and one charity bike ride, which was from London to Paris for charity, for the Brain Tumour Trust. And to say that was hard would be an understatement. I had the sorest of bums you can possibly think of. I'm talking it was sore for weeks, to the point where I couldn't even sit on a chair. It was a disaster. I mean, the one plus thing that came out of that was I got this cool tattoo. Well, not of the sore bum part of the trip, of the actual fun cycle bit. Well, it was meant to be fun anyway. And I got a big check from my primary school because they raised, I think it was about £1,000 by doing an own clothes day for me, which was pretty awesome. I'll put the picture on the screen so you can see it. But other than that, it wasn't particularly good. However, that wasn't the point of this trip. It was to raise money. And so all came good of it. But it was hard, it was grueling, and it was pretty miserable, to be totally honest with you. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The point of this is I had no previous cycle experience, and I was a novice in the cycling world, you could call me. Now, 365 days later, and we are worlds apart, absolutely worlds apart. I'm no longer in category C, but category A, and I have an FTP of 5 watts per kilo, which is pretty friggin' awesome. And according to Google, I am now an elite cyclist. So hey, absolutely smashed it. Anyway, let's go back to the beginning and let's take you guys through this journey. So it all started on Christmas Day with an FTP test, and as I just said previously, it came out at 229 watts, which I was extremely dissatisfied by. However, from this point, my head was in the game and I was absolutely certain I was going to stay consistent and do everything I possibly could. So my bike rides consisted of a threshold ride, a VO2 max ride, and an endurance ride, on top of the other triathlon training I was doing at this point. An example of these rides would have been something like 7 by 3 minutes at 120% for the VO2 max session, 8 by 5 minutes for the threshold session, and then a 3-hour just easy spin for the long ride. And all of this was done on the trainer, because in my head, this was the most efficient, effective way of hitting my sessions, ticking the boxes, controlling all the outside variables, and just basically not making one move wrong, doing everything I possibly could. And I think that's a big reason for the growth I had, because everything was done on Zwift. Now, there were some downsides to this, which I will come on to later on in the video, but fundamentally, this led to great progression because I could control absolutely everything. There was nothing I couldn't control. So all the intervals were hit to perfection. I was smashing the training, and it was quite frankly incredible. I was feeling great as the weeks went on. Now, 3 months later, on the 22nd of March, I did my next FTP test. I got a 295 watt, 20-minute power, which was so much bigger and so much greater than that last effort of 229 watts. And I was like, oh my gosh, this progression is incredible. I felt like I was Bradley Wiggins, quite frankly. It was amazing. Now, 300 watts in my head was like the holy grail of cycling numbers. And the fact that I was only 5 watts off that after 3 months of training really motivated me and just gave me so much, like, I can't describe it. It just invigorated me, gave me life. And it's like a light switch went off in my head. And I was like, I am going to continue to do this. I'm going to keep on smashing it. And let's see where we were going. So looking back from where I am now, I'm not quite sure why I was so excited about the fact that I'd hit these numbers. Anyway, I think that's the beauty of hindsight. And I think when you're at a higher point than you were previously, you always wonder, well, why was I not at a higher point then than I was? You're always questioning, could I have done something different? And you know, I guess at the time it was pretty good progression, but I think I was a little bit overexcited for the progression that I'd made. And, you know, quite frankly, I was nowhere near or close to Bradley Wiggins or the likes of Chris Froome. In fact, I was worlds away from that, and I still am now. And I'm not trying to think that I'm even close to that. It was just, I was very happy with the progression I'd made because I'd started off, like I said, quite frankly, right below average. And I'd gone to above average pretty quickly. Now, I obviously was chasing more than just being above average. Like, as I was saying, I wanted to do this as a career. So I still had big jumps to make, but I was definitely on the right path. And I think that was the point. However, what happened next was that we decided to get a new trainer. So at this point in time, I was using the Kicker Snap, which was an entry-level trainer. It's where you sort of tie your back wheel onto the bike, and as time goes on, your back tire gets absolutely eroded and ruined, and you end up with like tire splattered all over the wall, basically when you put it on too tight. It was a little bit of a faff. It wasn't the best thing, and it's definitely not good for your wheels. So we upgraded the trainer from a Kicker Snap to the TacX Neo Pro, I think it was. Now, this is obviously a top-of-the-range trainer, which is really good and, quite frankly, incredible. I love it. But one thing I didn't think of was that the power sort of readings would be different. This one was way more accurate. It was way more precise. It was just on a completely different level. So what happened? My not VO2 max, my threshold power went down. So we tested not long after March time, I think it was in May, and it went down to 291 watts, which was demoralizing to say the least, because I felt like my progression was on track. I was doing amazing. I was hitting the sessions, and then it went down. This happened to everyone in the family, by the way. My mum, my dad, everyone pretty much cycles, and their powers went down as well. In fact, their powers went down more than mine went down, so it made me feel pretty positive. But it was still a bit of a kick in the arse and a bit like, fuck's sake, I can't believe it. Why has this happened? It happened. It is what it is. Very quickly, I sort of got my head back in the game and thought, you know what, stop sulking. It's really not the end of the world in the scheme of things. There's so many more pressing things going on. Anyway, that's the way I thought about it, and we got back on track. Now, I was motivated to get to that 300 watt FTP. I was motivated to hit the sessions. I was still staying consistent with my workouts. Everything was going smoothly. It was just about not letting this sort of, little chip in the wall get me down, because as soon as you get down, it's probably not going to help you training. So I was very much trying to stay positive and just keep ticking along with the training sessions. So we were in May time, the weather was starting to come good. This was actually the year where we had an incredibly great summer in Britain. It was awesome, it was hot, warm, and there was pretty much no rain. In fact, it was pretty much like being in Spain, so it was top notch. So I started going outside and I did my first race simulation. This was a 90k effort outside on the roads, just to see how I was doing and how this power that I'd been sort of doing pretty well in inside translated to outside. And I think this is where I came into a few problems. I mean, from the power output, it was pretty good. I pushed 235, 240 watts, I think it was. I'll put the data on the screen so you can take a look at that. And I ended up doing the 90k in fact, I think it was about 89k, but almost 90k, in just under 2 hours, 30 minutes. So the speed was pretty good. And from that point of view, it was great. But from the handling and being in the TT position, staying tucked in, it was pretty dreadful. You know, as I'd said previously, I'd done all my training on the trainer, and it was extremely effective and efficient from a power point of view. But from a handling and like a road awareness point of view, I was like, you know, a rabbit in the headlights on the road. Cars going past made me feel uneasy. I wasn't stable in the aero position. I just felt awkward and out of place. And I think this worried me a little bit, because obviously I'm doing this to be a triathlete, not to be an indoor e-racer. So I had to make sure that I was able to translate the stuff I was doing inside to outside, and this was very much not the case at this point in time. So it was a little bit uncertain and threw a little bit of a spanner in the works, because from this point, I still stayed consistent with the indoor sessions, but I had to supplement a few outdoor sessions in there, just so I could stay, I guess, have peace of mind that when racing did come along, I would be able to execute okay, and I wouldn't be too sort of, I guess, startled by how different it would be. But I mean, from a power output and, you know, the improvements I'd made, it was pretty good. You know, be able to push 240 watts outside for 2.5 hours consistently with no breaks, I would say was a pretty good improvement, considering that 6 months ago, I couldn't even hold that for 15 minutes. So from that point of view, yes, that was great. It was amazing. But from the other side of things, I had to book my ideas up with going outside and handling the bike in a more efficient, effective way. Additionally, at this point, what I also decided to do was to get a coach, because I felt like I needed advice and I needed guidance. And quite frankly, getting a coach was just revolutionary. So my coach is Mel. She's incredible. It's awesome. It's insane. It is the best thing ever. I was of that sort of personality where I think I don't need a coach, I can do this all myself, and I was so wrong. I was so wrong. Having someone to speak to, having someone that orchestrates and pulls the strings for you is just so incredibly important. It takes the weight off your back. You don't have to worry about planning things. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Should I be doing it inside? Should I be doing it outside? There's so many questions that I could just ask, get answers to, and just sort of just not worry about. And that made my life so much easier. And the training sessions were, I'd say, pretty similar. But the one thing that changed is I understood what the purpose of them was. Why am I doing it? What's the need for doing this? Should I do this? Should I do that? I had someone to speak to. I had someone to sort of ask questions to. It was just so informative. It was incredible. It was amazing. And I think this is the key moment where progression just exploded. Like, I'd done pretty well previously, but at this point, the structure was on point. I was not missing anything. She was programming all this stuff for me, and it was just incredible. It was amazing, and I would recommend getting a coach to anyone, because I guarantee you, I absolutely guarantee you, you will make huge improvements. So this for me was like I guess I've always said the light switch moment, but it was another light switch moment where things just exploded and went incredibly well. So now, I've got a coach, I'm staying consistent with my training, and everything's improving. One thing where I'd gone wrong previously with the FTP test was that I would blow up. I would get 7 minutes in and my legs would be full of lactic acid. I would have 13 minutes left to go, and I would be on a downward slope into absolute chaos, to the point where the last 2 or 3 minutes I'd be holding 200 watts. Like, that was not effective, that was not efficient. So something that we decided between myself and Mel was that we would do the ramp test, because that would alleviate and eliminate any chance of me basically going off too hard and killing myself, because it's impossible to do that on the ramp test, because basically you progressionally increase until you can't carry on anymore. So it suited me absolutely perfectly. And yes, I know some of you may say it's a cop-out, but I don't really care. It worked. So we did 3 more months of training after May. So this was April, May, June, July, August. So we're now in August time, and I do my next FTP test. And this comes out at 335 watts. So this was huge progression. This was like absolutely huge progression. In fact, it might have been September time. I think it was August or September, but the back end of summer. And now the progression at this point was massive, because I jumped from 295 to 335. And this was huge. This was absolutely massive at this point in time. I'd broken that 300 watt, like, holy grail barrier, and I was well above that. And I was feeling great, and everything was on track. So at this point, I was pretty satisfied with the progression, and everything was actually pretty good. Now, I still wanted a little bit more, and that's exactly what I went and did. I stayed consistent for those last few months up until Christmas, which would have been then the whole year. And I tested just before Christmas. I ended up with 350 watts. So I ended up smashing it, getting well above what I guess my intended target was originally of 300 watts. And yeah, I was pretty satisfied with that. The ending bit is a little bit anticlimactic because nothing actually changed. Once I had a coach and I got into the rhythm, everything sort of stayed the same. I didn't really learn anything else. So this last sort of little bit here isn't particularly exciting, but it is what it is. Now, over this period of time, I am like more than happy over this year, how it went, how it felt. And with the progression that I made, I think the 2 or 3 key points I would make is having a coach makes a difference, a big difference. Following a structured plan also makes a big difference, and having consistency. Now, if you've liked this video, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers, your boy, Steve-O.